Well, they're establishing the installations where they train people. They're welcoming foreign fighters to flock there the way in years past they did in Syria and Iraq. And we don't want to be on a glide slope to a situation like Syria and Iraq. That's the reason why we're watching it that closely. That's the reason why we develop options for what we might do in the future.
Well, that was Defense Secretary Ash Carter discussing the growth of ISIS in Libya. The president meeting with national security advisors this week on stepping up the fight against the terror group in Libya, which, of course, Libya is a country that doesn't have a functioning central government. Civil unrest in the North African nation following the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi has created, as some have described, an ideal safe haven for ISIS. Should the terror group be forced out of Iraq and Syria, or even if they're not? That's also the concern. Joining me now is retired Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel Mitch Utterback. Mitch, it's great to have you on the program. Why is this so important to watch Libya? Why strategically is it so important?
Well, strategically, it's ISIS's second front. It's literally an ISIS colony. They're a great military strategic power. You know, they have a great ability to figure out what's going to happen next and think ahead in the future. They know that Libya is an ungoverned country. Massive oil revenue and oil resources there. You know, it's a strategic and it's a financial safe haven from which they can launch and plan attacks, certainly into Europe and eventually into the United States. We've got to pay attention to it, and it's great to hear that we are.
So close to Europe, as you mentioned, no central government. We do know a lot about the militias that are in control of different parts of the country, or at least the territory at this time. And we can't help but think about Benghazi as well through all of this and some of our experiences there post-Gaddafi. So what's the risk for our operators? Because the thinking is that there will be some special operations that are going to be ongoing in that country, or at least being set up at this time.
The risk for our men and women that will be operating there, intelligence operators, special operations, the few numbers. You know, there aren't going to be that many of them there. There's not a major quick reaction force that's going to be able to take care of them. Years after Benghazi, there's probably still not a lot of firepower there that can come to the assistance of our intelligence operators or our troops if they get in trouble.
So what do?
We send more. We really ask our European allies and our North African allies to contribute more, literally, intelligence operators and special operations troops, and get them in there. We need to saturate that country to determine where the threat is coming from, who the ISIS affiliates are, who the ISIS fighters are, and begin targeting them immediately. Right. But it really has to be help from North Africa and Europe as well, because they face a greater immediate threat. We'll
see if they're as anxious to help us as they were when Gaddafi was in power. We did have a coalition then. We'll see if it still stands. Congressman Ryan Zinke is a former Navy SEAL. Served our country in several different conflicts, and he had something interesting to say about Libya. He says, what I see happening is disturbing, particularly with the rules of engagement, and this administration's refusal to put a force package in that will move the needle or will aid victory in our lifetime. So he's talking about the rules of engagement, even if we get to go, what that actually looks like. The rules of engagement were a topic at the debate last night. I just want to play a little sound from that.
And we need to be focused and lift the rules of engagement so we're not sending our fighting men and women into combat with their arms tied behind their back.
The caliphate of ISIS has to be destroyed, which means we need to arm directly the Kurds, embed our troops with the Iraqi military, re-engage with the Sunni tribal leaders, get the lawyers off the damn backs of the military once and for all.
You've done 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 tour in Iraq. You know about these rules of engagement. What's your reaction? What's your take on what was said in the debate, and also how it applies to any of our missions moving forward?
It's great to hear a potential president talking about lessening and lifting rules of engagement. And really, rules of engagement, they're one of our classified parts of our operations, but they literally come from the president himself. It really started in Afghanistan years ago. We can't have any civilian casualties. We don't want any civilians hurt. That'll turn the people against us. What we see across the board is a legacy of that. So a relaxing of the rules of engagement where you can more quickly target and there's fewer levels of permission. A tactical guy on the ground, a staff sergeant, a lieutenant from a SEAL team, he needs to be able to say, we need to take these guys out.
Because as of right now, what is it like?
Well, it's a couple levels up.
So it's taking a long time to be able to make some of the decisions for the people on the ground that are actually confronting the enemy that we're facing.
That's right, and some of those decisions come through electronic means and radios and cameras, and you know, sometimes the equipment fails and a decision doesn't get made for simply a means of communication breaks down. But if we give the boots on the ground guy the ability to make that decision, we're going to see more progress.
And of course, we certainly don't want civilian casualties. No one does, including the people fighting in the wars. But you also are at war, and there are risks involved. Lieutenant Colonel Utterback, great to have you on the program as always. Thank you. John?